Hello ladies and gentlebeans. Right, we're going to carry on with these class overviews for DragonAge Inquisition. The next one we are going to do is the Katari. He is a two-handed warrior class, not all that great at taking damage, but pretty decent at dealing damage as well. Let's jump into the abilities and have a look, see what he has. So his first tree is Onslaught. His second tree is Tactics. Onslaught being your damage tree for the most part, and Tactics being more or less he singles out like targets on the battlefield. He's not going to be a tank of any kind because he really doesn't take all that much damage or build enough guard up to actually be a tank. But it's more you pick on like the bigger guys and keep them locked down so they don't go after your squishies. Okay, so let's go on over the Onslaught tree first of all. So the first skill you get when you select this character is Charging Bull. You slam into your enemies, increasing your guard, knocking them down as you break through their lines. You deal 150% weapon damage. You gain 10% guard per enemy you hit. You have an 8-second. It has an 8-second cooldown time and costs 5 stamina per second. So this skill basically drains your stamina down for as long as you're actually charging. You can cancel at any time by pressing the skill again. Which I find particularly nice for just knocking down a few enemies to get behind them and obviously getting the flanking bonus. It's also nice, it combos well with the Mighty Blow skill, which we'll go over in a moment. Gore and Trample is the upgraded version. It says after you finish your charge, your next ability costs no stamina, which is particularly good if you're charging for the full amount of your stamina. So by the time you end your charge, you've got no stamina left. At least you can still actually cast an ability. The first passive what you get to is Clear a Path. Hitting multiple targets with a single swing of your weapon restores your stamina for each extra target, so you get an additional 10% stamina for every additional target after the first one that you hit with a single swing, and you get an additional +3 strength. Nice to have if you're going with a build that drains stamina quite a lot, obviously, because you get that stamina back pretty darn quickly. Mighty Blow. You deliver a powerful attack that crumples foes, leaving them knocked down for a short time. You do more damage to targets that are already knocked down. It requires a two-handed weapon. It does 200% weapon damage. You get a 200% weapon damage bonus to targets that are already knocked down. It's got a 16-second cooldown time and costs 50 stamina. Now, again, this is where I say this skill combos really well with the Charging Ball, because if you charge a couple of enemies and you get behind them, they're already knocked down, and you get that additional 200% damage bonus when they're knocked down. The upgraded version is Mighty Blow, costs less stamina and deals increased damage against targets that have been knocked down. So it's got a 15 stamina cost reduction and does an additional 300% damage to knock down targets. Again, combos really well with the Charging Bull. The one thing you need to note though is that Charging Bull and Mighty Blow will not knock down some of the bigger enemies in the game, so you really need to pick on the smaller enemies rather than the larger ones to obviously get that benefit. Pommel Strike. You lash out with a fast strike that briefly stuns your target. It again requires a two-handed weapon. It does 300% weapon damage, gives a 3-second stun duration, has a 20-second cooldown, and costs 35 stamina. Nice. This side is better for, I guess, the bigger guys than the smaller guys. But again, some of the bigger guys will be immune to the stun. Obviously, that 300% weapon damage is nice. It's got a long cooldown time, which is not all that great, but hopefully. It seems like a decent skill. I mean, it's fast. It's pretty much instant cast, so it's a pretty nice skill to take. Pommel Strike hits harder and faster. You get a 4-second cooldown reduction and a stun duration bonus of 1 second. So you get a 4-second stun duration, and the cooldown is reduced down to 16 seconds, which is still pretty high. I don't know if Pommel Strike is going to be extremely viable, but if you're going like the pure damage route and the lockdown route, I guess this Pommel Strike might fit in nicely with taking that as a skill from this tree if you're going through the Tactics tree, just to keep those enemies locked down a bit better. The next passive we have is Warrior's Resolve. You fight all the harder when you're hurting, gaining stamina when you lose health. So you get an additional 10% for every 10% stamina for every 10% health you lose, and you get an additional +3 to your Constitution. Again, this skill very much complements the Clear the Path as well. You gain your stamina back pretty quickly. Again, it's for builds that require you to gain your stamina back as quick as possible, so you can carry on using those abilities. Grisly Mutilation. Killing an enemy has a chance to cause fear in nearby enemies, so it has a 20% chance to fear enemies in a 10-meter radius, and you gain an additional 3 strength on unlock. Fear is pretty good. There are classes that actually take note of fear. The Reaver is one that springs to mind, that do increase damage to targets that are feared. So if you've got a Reaver in your party, or anyone that can take advantage of that immobilization, the fear and stuff like that, then it's a pretty nice one to have. And it means that you don't get hit as often as well, because all the enemies start running away. Relentless. The Katari was bred to kill. He demonstrates with overwhelming physical prowess. So you gain additional 4 cunning, an additional 3 strength, and an additional 2 constitution. A really nice passive. This is one of the better passives that gives you just like flat out stat bonuses, because obviously it gives you 4 of one stat, 3 of another, and 2 of another, rather than just 3 across the board. Cunning is really nice to have because it increases the chance that you get to critical strike. So obviously, if you're going the damage route, you want to be able to crit as much as possible. The next passive we get to is Flow of Battle. Every critical hit reduces the cooldown times of your abilities, giving you the edge to finish off your enemy. So you get a 1 second cooldown time for every critical hit you land, and you get an additional 3 strength. Again, this skill here complements the additional 4 cunning really well, obviously, because the additional 4 cunning gives you a more % chance to actually score a critical hit. So the more critical hits you get, the more you get on cooldown reduction, which is really nice. It complements Pommel again really well, because the Pommel strike cooldown is pretty high. So the more critical hits you get, the less time obviously it takes before you can use Pommel again. Coup de Grace. You deal more damage against enemies that are stunned or knocked down, better them than you. So you get an additional 30% damage bonus against anybody who's knocked down or stunned, and you get an additional +3 on strength. Again, like I said, with the Grisly Mutilation, there are some classes that take advantage of certain immobilization effects. Obviously, the Coup de Grace doesn't actually take advantage of enemies that are feared. Rather, they take advantage of stunned or knocked down enemies. So it might be a nice idea to take Coup de Grace if you're going to go the Pommel Strike route, because obviously you get that 3 second or 4 second stun duration. So you're going to be doing increased damage if you marry those two together. Shield Breaker. Your critical hits crack armor and rend shield, sundering your enemy's armor for a short time. So they get a 20% armor reduction, you get a 6 second duration on that armor reduction, and you gain additional 3 strength on the unlock. Again, another nice passive to take, along with obviously Flow of Battle and everything like that, because, and with Relentless, could that increase critical strike chance and everything like that, then you get that armor reduction on the enemies that gives your team, obviously makes your team deal more damage to the enemy that you're attacking. Oops, I just hit my keyboard then. Opportunist. You have a great chance of scoring a critical hit when attacking from behind, so you get an additional 20% critical hit chance and an additional 3 cunning on unlock. So that additional cunning also increases your chance to critical hit as well. So from attacking from behind, you've got a nice high critical hit chance, especially if you take if you take Relentless as well, because you get that additional 4 cunning from that, you get your additional 3 cunning from that, your 20% cooldown reduction, you've got your Flow of Battle as well, so it decreases your cooldowns. Pretty much this tree is revolving around like getting as many critical hits as possible over and over and over again. Okay, the next active we get to is Whirlwind. You spin with your weapon outstretched, cutting through enemies in your path. Requires a 2-handed weapon. It does 70% weapon damage per hit. It has a 24-second cooldown time, which is absurdly high, to be honest. Has a 10 stamina cost, and Impact Detonator ability used on incapacitated foes for a combo. Obviously, incapacitated, I think, covers whole bases, so whether they be feared or anything like that, then you're incapacitated. That class is as incapacitated, so you get your impact detonator ability to combo with the whirlwind there. This is the build that I'm going for. I'm hoping to keep whirlwind up as much as possible. Just keep going and keep going and keep going. Obviously, I want to take my get my cooldowns reduced by my critical strike. I get my the additional 4 cunning from this, which is increased critical. I get the increased critical from attacking from behind. I may want to think obviously about going into the grizzly mutilation, so that if I do kill somebody while I'm in whirlwind, I get that chance for the impact detonator to go off. That seems like the build to go for me for this character. I haven't played him all that much, so maybe some other people out there have, or maybe you guys have played the single player more than I have, and you can think of a better way to actually build the character. But we're just going through the skills, obviously showing you guys what these characters have. So Raising Winds is the upgrade to Whirlwind. It's Whirlwind becomes more effective the longer you sustain it, so you get an additional 15% damage bonus per rotation. So if you can keep that going, that additional damage is going to help you out really well. Again, like I said, the build where you keep as much stamina up as possible, which is really nice. The more stamina you can keep up, the longer you can keep Whirlwind going, the more damage it does in the end. Earth-Shaking Strike. Your great blow tears open the ground with a shockwave that batters enemies caught in its path. So again, requires a two-handed weapon. It does 2 hits. It does 150% weapon damage per hit, so 300% weapon damage if you hit the enemy with both strikes. Has a 12-meter area of effect. It has a 20-second cooldown and a cost of 50 stamina. A nice ability to complement, I guess, your mighty blow and stuff like that, and your charge and everything like that. You get behind them, you use this, you get your nice area effect, you clump everybody up together, they're all on the ground, and you get a nice decent damage boost there from your Earth Shaking Strike. Shattered Ground is the upgrade. Flames erupt from the fissure left by Earth Shaking Strike, damaging enemies that cross it. So there's an 8-second duration of flame on the floor. They get a 20% weapon damage per second burning dot on them, and the duration of that dot lasts for 8 seconds. Favor. When an enemy dies near you, the thrill of death spurs you to hit that much harder. So every time an enemy dies, you get an additional 30% damage bonus for 5 seconds, and the enemy has to die within 10 meters of you. You get an additional 3 cunning, which obviously increases your critical strike again. Again, increasing that damage again over and over again, getting that damage up as high as possible. Scenting Blood. Being near a badly wounded enemy spurs you into a frenzy, driving you to move faster and giving you a better chance of striking deadly blows. So if there's an enemy within 10 meters that has a health threshold of below 35%, then you get an additional 50% speed bonus, and you get an additional bonus to your critical hit chance of 10%. This is the only skill tree that I find that pretty much all the skills in it like go together really well. Piercing Blows. Your attacks ignore a portion of your target's armor, so you get a 25% armor penetration and additional +3 strength. Armor penetration is okay. I mean, I don't find that it's all that useful at the moment. I mean, obviously, if they start bringing out better levels and stuff like that, I don't find armor penetration to be all that useful at the moment. I don't see the need to waste a point in getting piercing blows, because if you're doing that enough damage anyway, then you shouldn't need to worry about enemies with armor and stuff. It's more about reducing the damage that you take as opposed to increasing the damage that you deal to armored targets. You want to be able to do decent amounts of damage to everything and not just rely on, I'm going to take out this armored guy because I can do increased penetration to armored targets. Because once you start getting to the perilous difficulties, it's more about how much damage you can take rather than how much damage you can dish out. Because if you come up against a bunch of archers, the chances are that if all them archers end up targeting you, you're going to pretty much go down straight away because they hit like a truck. And the last passive we have in this tree is Blood Frenzy. They thought they'd get they thought you'd get weaker once they'd wounded you. They were very wrong. You get an additional 5% damage bonus for each 10% of your mission health, and you get an additional 3 strength as well. So again, very, very nice to complement your whirlwind ability and all your cooldowns and your warrior's resolve and stuff like that. So that your health is going to go down, your stamina is going to go up. As your health goes down, you're going to get increased damage. You're going to be able to keep your whirlwind going for longer. The longer the whirlwind goes, the more damage that goes up. So it's a nice complement there. It's again, like I said, this is hopefully the build that I'm going to go for and hopefully make it work for myself. Okay, so that's that tree. That's the onslaught tree. Let's move on over to the tactics tree. So the first skill that you get in the tactics tree is block and smash. Now, this skill is, in my opinion, terrible. Absolutely terrible. So it says you stand ready to deflect the next incoming attack and deliver a punishing counter to your attacker. So it requires a two-handed weapon. It does 150% weapon damage if you counter that attack. It costs 10 stamina and 5 stamina per second the longer you actually hold the block there. Now, the reason why I don't like this ability too much is because it relies on the enemy attacking you directly from the front. If they move slightly and come around the side a little bit, then you don't get that counter off. Or if it's a ranged attacker, then that counter won't go off. It relies on that enemy attacking you directly from the front, and it doesn't happen all that often. I've tried to use it, and I've kept it up there, and people have been attacking me, and I'm still going down, and it's not triggering the counter. So I don't know. It's one of them things that I'm not all that impressed with at the moment. Okay, so the next ability we come to, or the upgrade, should I say, to block and smash, is Flawless Defense. Countering an enemy's attack now does bonus damage and adds to your guard. So you get an additional 50% damage bonus if you were to counter an attack. You gain an additional 15 guard if you counter that attack as well. Again, not all that reliable, I've found. It's not one of the skills that I would use all that often. It's on my bar at the moment because I haven't got that many skills to swap it out with. The first passive we come to is Adamant. You've trained hard and you know how to make the most of whatever armor you're wearing. So you get an additional 20% armor bonus and you gain +3 Constitution. That armor bonus, again, pretty self-explanatory. You take less damage. Grappling Chain. With a hooked chain and a lot of muscle, you drag a target into arm's reach, so it does 100% weapon damage. It's got a 12 seconds cooldown and costs 20 stamina. This is one of the skills that I am extremely enjoying in multiplayer. It's one of them skills that if an enemy decides to go running after your mage character or your archer that's sitting in the back, then you can just turn around and pull him back to you. It's nice to as well if you've got a nice clump of enemies that you want to whirlwind, but there's one slightly out of the way. You can pull that one into the clump as well, which is nice. It's nice for getting those archers as well, getting them archers into the fray. The upgrade to this is give them the boot. After grappling chain drags an opponent, you stun them with a hard kick. So you gain 200 weapon damage with that kick, and you get a 3-second stun duration on that as well. A really nice ability, really nice that complements the whirlwind bin the build that I'm going for. So I will be probably picking that up as soon as I can. Combat roll. You dive and roll to where the battle needs you to be, whether it's escaping from a group or moving to flank an opponent. So it's got a 2-second cooldown time and costs 20 stamina. I've heard that for damaging rolls, this is actually really good because it gets you in there as quick as possible. The tanky rolls, as I went over in the Templar video previous to this one, I can't really see a use for it as a tank, but as this is a damaging class, then this might actually come in quite useful. Especially if you're getting low on health as well, or if that whirlwind is carrying on and carrying on and carrying on, and you need to get out of there because your health is getting a bit low, maybe nice to actually use. Roll with it. You can now use combat roll to recover from most disabling conditions. This is especially nice for the demon commander when he goes underground and he's just about to pop up again, because he slows you down. It's nice to get out of that because it removes the slow. Next passive we come to is It'll Cost You. Any foe that attacks you in melee is going to bleed for it, taking a portion of the damage they inflict. So the damage is a melee attacker actually deals to you is returned by 15%, and you gain an additional 3 strength. Again, this skill might be incorporated into my build, as I'm whirlwinding in a bunch of enemies. If they're attacking me, then they're actually taking damage more so, which could be a really nice addition to that build. Bear Mauls the Wolves. Using techniques perfected by Olisane Cavaliers, you can't be flanked by enemies, and you're less likely to be staggered when hit from the front. Again, a nice ability all round, really, for tanks and for damaging abilities, because my god, that flanking damage is absurd. If you've got an assassin on the field and he flanks you, you can pretty much, even if you've got guard up, if he gets that flank on you and nobody's keeping tabs on him, pretty much end up getting one shot. So it's very nice passive to have. Resilience. You don't flinch, don't blink, and don't back down. Enemies that hit you with melee attacks are staggered by recoil, so they get a 5% stun chance and a 2-second stun duration to that stun chance, and you gain an additional 3 constitution as well. Again, another passive that's probably going to complement my whirlwind build really well, but any build, I suppose, that involves you in melee range with melee characters that has that stun chance is really nice, because if they're not moving, if they're not doing anything, that's less damage you're taking, which is always a good thing. So consider this passive as a reduction to the damage you take from melee characters again. Deep Reserves. You get your breath back faster than most. When your stamina is very low, it regenerates more quickly. So the low stamina threshold is 50%. Stamina regeneration bonus is 50%. And you gain additional 3 strength. Again, another passive that complements my whirlwind build really well. A lot of passives in here are complementing that really well. Obviously, if you've got a build that relies on using that stamina over and over and over and over again, then getting that stamina back up as quickly as possible is your priority. So again, Deep Reserves is a really nice passive to take. Hamstring. When you attack a target from behind, you leave them slowed. The speed reduction of 50%, a duration of 3 seconds, and a strength of 3 on unlock. Now, I mentioned in a previous video, the Hunter one, if memory serves, that Hamstring wasn't all that great. Now, I still stand by that notion as the Hunter class, but as a melee class, then Hamstring is really nice to have, because it means that they can't run away from you. Especially if you're taking the ability that has the chance to fear targets as well if something dies, because as they're running away from you, you can hit them in the back, and then they're slowed down and they're not running as fast, so you can deal more damage to them. It's as a melee damage dealer, Hamstring is a really nice passive to take. Crippling Blows. You know how to take the fight out of your foes when your critical hits leave enemies weakened, so they get 15% damage reduction and over 10 seconds, and the effect stacks as well, so the more critical hits you gain, the more damage reduction the enemies have, and you gain an additional 3 strength as well. The next passive we come to is Guard Smasher. You've learned how to batter through your enemy's defenses, doing more damage to their guard with every hit, so you gain an additional 100% damage to enemies that have guard, and an additional 3 strength when you unlock it. Not an amazing passive, I must say, because obviously not all enemies have guard. In fact, very few enemies have guard. But unfortunately, this is one of the passives that they force you to take. It would be nice to have maybe I don't know, Hamstring here and the Guard Smasher up here, because at least Hamstring's slightly useful, whereas I don't see Guard Smasher being useful. It's only useful in certain circumstances, whereas Hamstring could be useful pretty much all the time. I would say to probably move these 2 passives around, or at least put this passive somewhere where it's not imperative that you take it in order to get to other things. To the death. You taunt an enemy into a frenzy. Their damage output increases over time, but so does the amount of damage they take. The frenzy ends if you get out of range of the enemy. So it's a 15-meter range. The enemy damage input is increased by 5 per second, but also their damage taken is increased by 5 per second. Cooldown time of 32 seconds, which is extremely high, and a stamina cost of 35 stamina. Now, obviously, This is not a skill that you want to use on a big boss creature, because even though they're going to increase the damage taken, they're also going to increase the damage that they do. So you want to use this on something big-ish that you need to take down quickly, but not too big that's going to stay alive for a long time, and their damage is just going to spiral out of control. The upgrade to this is On Guard. While To the Death is active, your guard improves as your target takes damage and your correct weaknesses of your own. So you gain 25% guard amount for while the target that has the weakness To the Death, sorry, active on them, which is nice. But again, like I said, the Katari is not a tanky class, so I don't see guard is nice just to mitigate that little amount of damage, but it's not imperative. Biggest threat. You make yourself the biggest threat on the battlefield. The warrior no enemy can ignore. Threat increases by 25%, and you gain an additional +3 Constitution. Now, this is one of the passives that I would say probably you will not want to take off this tree, because you don't want enemies coming after you, because even though you've got massive amounts of armor, you don't build guard up all that much, so you're going to be taking a hell of a lot of damage. So probably not the best passive to take out of this tree. Challenge. Your powerful shout carries across the battlefield, taunting and targeted enemy and improving your guard. So it's an 8-second taunt, a 10% guard amount, cooldown time 16 seconds, and costs 20 stamina. We went over the challenge in the Templar video, but again, it's probably not a skill that you'd want to take as the Katari. It's better, I guess, for if you just want to pick off that one small target. Maybe there's an archer that's firing at your mage in the back, and he's close to death, and you can taunt that archer off him and then just run up to him and slaughter him. But maybe you want to taunt him and then use the chains to pull him over to you, just to make sure that he doesn't get that killing blow on your mage that's in the back. But again, don't think of the Katari as a tank, because he really can't take the damage. He doesn't have the means to build the guard up as quickly as some of the other classes. So he's not a great tank to deal with the massive crowds of enemies. Throw the Gauntlet. Successfully hitting a target with challenge gets your blood pumping, temporarily increases your stamina regeneration by 15 stamina per second. Something that I may take with my whirlwind bind. What the hell is that word? Build, simply for the stamina regeneration. I may just, it ends up just being one of them things where you taunt a weaker character, maybe one of the smaller melee guys rather than some of the bigger guys, so you're not taking all that damage too quickly. But obviously that stamina regeneration is really nice to have if I can manage to get down here and not spend all my points up here. Cutting Words. Your party does more damage to taunted targets as you rattle your enemies' nerves and goad them into mistakes that leave them open. So again, the same with the Templar, exactly the same passive that the Templar has. You gain an additional 20% bonus damage to taunted targets, and you gain an additional 3 strength. Again, a nice skill to have, but again, not probably one of the better passives in this tree, simply because obviously you've got no way of causing mass taunt. And again, it's good in a way, because as I said before, the Katari doesn't make an amazing tanking character. But I mean, if you want to try building him as a tank and you manage to find a viable build for him, then I'd love to see what your build is. Warhorn. Your Warhorn's blast puts fear into the hearts of the foes, leaving them panicked. So it has an 8-meter area effect, gives them a 6-second fear duration, and a cooldown time of 24 seconds, and costs 35 stamina. I've seen this used, and it's quite funny, because if you can manage to get a nice big clump of enemies, you can pretty much just make them run around for the end of time. It's nice for your archers that tend to sit in the back and end up massacring your entire team. You get some groups of enemies that have like 5 or 6 archers in the back, and they'll all sort of like clump up together. So it's nice to just run at them, fear them around a bit, so you can deal with the other enemies before you have to deal with the archers. The upgrade to that is Break Their Spirit. Warhorn now shatters your enemy's guard, and panicked enemies are too shaken to defend themselves, leaving their armor sundered. So they get 20% armor reduction and a bonus damage of 1,200% to their guard. So basically it just removes guard altogether. Bearing in mind that Warhorn, to some of the bigger boss monsters, like I can't remember for the life of me what his name is completely, but the two-handed warrior guy, the boss at the end, he is immune to fear and stuff like that, so this is not going to break his guard. So it's one of them things. I mean, if you want to give it a try, then by all means give it a try. But in all honesty, I feel like the actives from the onslaught tree are more preferential to your damage and the way that the character should be built, as opposed to the actives from the tactics tree. But if you manage to find a decent build using the tactics tree, then I'd love to see it. So if you'd like to screenshot it and maybe leave me a link in the comment section, then by all means please do. So that is a look at the Katari class. Hopefully you guys found it informative. You know what the skills are now, so you can make an informed decision on whether you want to unlock this one or one of the others. The armor doesn't actually change, which is weird. I unlocked the new armor. I don't know if that's a bug or what, but if I go into my inventory, we go to armor. If I change to the Katari's hide, which is the armor you get from the beginning, which is weird because it's blue and everybody else's is white, he doesn't change. And then the upgraded armor is purple, which is again weird because then everybody else's upgraded armor is blue, but it doesn't change his appearance at all, which is really strange. I don't know if that's a bug or whether that's meant to be. I'm not entirely sure, but yes, so that's a look at the Katari class. Thank you guys very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.